In this lesson, we'll be looking at functions. Now, they're very similar to function blocks, except for they don't have their own instance data. So let's go ahead and add one to our project, which we do in exactly the same way as the function block. We can choose our language, and notice again that there are less languages available than that of the function block. In fact, if we look at the organization block, we can see that we have the same languages. And that's because there's no data to carry the requirements of other languages that need to retain things between scans. So we only have these 4 languages available. I'm going to go ahead and create it in ladder. As per all of the objects, it will appear in the project tree on the left and open on creation. Now let's have a quick look at the interface. In our function block, we had an additional interface element, which was the static. We don't have that in the function, but we do have an additional return, which tells the function what type of data it's going to return, if any. So we have a special data type here called void, which is we're not going to return a value. But if I give this a bool, this means that we will return a Boolean value at the end of our function, which we will need to assign. So for example, we could give this 2 inputs. So input 1 and input 2. And here we can say, if both of these inputs are on, then I want to return my function, function 1 value. So input 1 and input 2, and then function 1, which is our return element. If we go to our main OB and we drop an instance of this function in, we can see that we don't get the pop-up asking for our call options because there's no data associated with this. There's similarly nothing put into the interface for the main OB because we don't need an instance of this. You can assume, for the want of a better way of putting it, you can assume that function 1 is actually held in temporary memory because all functions are called in temporary memory. So here, if I put a new tag, so we'll just call this, we'll just call this m100.0 and m100.1 and put this into m100.2. You can see that it's created tags for me, and this is now functional. If input 1 is on and input 2 is on, then tag 4 will be on the return value. If I come back into function 1, I can still assign additional outputs and also reference those in the same way we would in the function block. And if I go back to my main OB and right click, update block call, it'll show me the differences. Click OK. I can now reference this, and you'll see that I have to give this a value. If I delete the return value, I have to give it a value. And unlike the function block, which has instance data, so we can set default values, what would be passed in if we didn't put a value there. Because a function doesn't have any instance data, we have to put something every time. And that is the major difference between a function block and a function. A function cannot remember anything between scans. All it can do is take some input data and then set some output data, and that's it. But you still have all of the same functionality that doesn't require remembering information between scans as a function block. You can still pass in-out references, you can still pass inputs in, outputs out, and you also have the availability of a designated return value.